At the beginning of the film, we see a girl named Michelle in 1990, just before the war between humans and robots begins. She is watching her brother Chris take a difficult math exam at school, which, if passed, would allow him to go directly to college. Chris is a genius, and Michelle praises him. Chris wears a t-shirt featuring Cosmo, a cartoon robot, which angers a military boy because a war with robots is imminent. Michelle apologizes and takes Chris away. Chris doesn't want to go to college, but Michelle encourages him, telling him to use his intelligence to make the world a better place. Eventually, Chris agrees. Next, we are introduced to a scientist named Then, who despises robots created by humans. Over the years, many robots have been made to assist with daily tasks, but they gradually became dissatisfied and started demanding rights, which led to a conflict between humans and robots. The robots' leader was Mr. Peanut. Humans used robots for labor and discarded them like trash when they were no longer needed, which made the robots want to live like humans. We also see the film's director, Joe Russo, appearing in a news segment, stating that robots should be discarded once they are no longer useful. The war between humans and robots begins, leading to a global ban on the use of robots. Anyone caught using them would face imprisonment. In the war, military officer Evans explains that robots have the upper hand because they never tire. However, then develops a new technology called neurotech, which introduces a neurocaster armor. This armor allows humans to control robotic bodies through a helmet. With this technology, humans gain the upper hand and defeat the robots within weeks. A ruthless officer named Mark, known as the Robot Butcher, played a key role in exterminating robots. Following the war, Dr. Peanut signs a deal with humans, resulting in the surviving robots being imprisoned in a restricted area known as D. Then further advances his technology, allowing human consciousness to be split into two parts, one controlling a robotic body while the other remains in the human body, experiencing life remotely. This innovation spreads worldwide, changing how people live. The story then shifts to 1994. Michelle now lives with her foster father, Chad, who keeps her for financial benefits but doesn't truly care for her. Chad uses robots to transport himself virtually to Venus. One day, Michelle leaves for school, where students are taught using neurohelmets. However, Michelle opposes this technology, wanting to experience real life. Her resistance lands her in the principal's office, where she reveals that her family died in a car crash, not in the war. The teacher, feeling sympathetic, suggests she use neurotherapy to calm herself, but Michelle refuses. That night, Michelle recalls memories of her brother Chris. While sleeping, she notices a strange entity entering her house. It's a robot. The robot finds Michelle hiding under her bed, and she prepares to fight. It turns out to be an old Cosmo model robot. Cosmo signals Michelle to fix a wire inside its head. When she does, Cosmo speaks, revealing limited programmed words, and says, "I am your brother." This shocks Michelle, who refuses to believe it, insisting that Chris is dead. Chad discovers Cosmo with Michelle and warns her that if authorities find out about the robot, they will both be punished. When Chad tries to attack Cosmo, Michelle knocks him out, and she and Cosmo escape using Chad's car. They travel to a distant place where Cosmo gazes at abandoned robots. Michelle demands to know why he claimed to be Chris and if his consciousness is inside the robot. Cosmo confirms it. Cosmo mentions a company named Center, which belongs to Van. Michelle realizes Center is a massive global organization. Cosmo gestures that a bespectacled doctor has crucial information about him. Michelle recalls that after her accident, Dr. Kian saved her life and told her that Chris was dead. Cosmo then shows Michelle a map and indicates that Dr. Kian is inside D, the robot prison zone. Michelle is hesitant but ultimately trusts Cosmo. They journey toward the restricted zone, reaching a nearby city where Michelle notices people using neurohelmets to get high. Cosmo warns that the world is in danger, but Michelle says they can't do anything about it. They hide when a military officer, Evans, arrives to conduct an illegal gun trade. Evans demonstrates an old gun to a buyer, but when the buyer refuses to pay, Evans has his robotic ally, Tim, kill him. They steal the dead man's neurocaster and load it into their truck. Taking advantage of this moment, Michelle and Cosmo sneak into the truck. Meanwhile, Mark, tracking Cosmo, arrives at Michelle's abandoned car, determined to destroy Cosmo. The next day, Evans takes the stolen equipment to his hideout near D. He illegally steals parts from robots imprisoned there. Inside the hideout, Evans is frustrated when his food spoils because Tim used the fridge's power to charge himself. As Evans scolds Tim, they hear Michelle and Cosmo moving. Tim captures Michelle, and Evans is surprised to see a young girl. Michelle flatters Evans, recognizing his past reputation, and says she knows he smuggles goods into D. Evans warns that entering D means certain death and tells them to leave. Suddenly, someone approaches their hideout. Evans quickly hides hides Cosmo and Tim while pretending Michelle is his younger sister. Mark arrives and demands Evans hand over the robots. He also recognizes Michelle, knowing she's helping a robot. Evans denies harboring any robots, but Mark threatens him. Tim suddenly attacks Mark, and Mark retaliates with an electric shock. A fight ensues, with Cosmo and Tim battling Mark. Michelle turns off the lights, allowing them to escape. Mark, now furious, removes his helmet, revealing his real face. Michelle, Evans, Cosmo, and Tim realize they are now trapped inside D. Evans is enraged, blaming Michelle for their predicament. They hear the sounds of dangerous scavenger robots, machines that dismantle other robots to upgrade themselves. While searching for shelter, they find a large, abandoned robot. Tim takes control of it, becoming a massive combat machine. Michelle suggests finding Dr. Kian, who might know how to escape. Evans agrees, and they set out. Along the way, Evans asks Michelle about her past, realizing she lost her parents. Michelle reminisces about her loving family. She then asks how Evans and Tim met. Evans reveals that during the war, robots captured him and broke his legs. He was on the verge of death when Tim saved him. Since then, they've been inseparable, hiding from the world after the war ended. Michelle is touched by their friendship. Meanwhile, Ben is at home with his mother, who appears happy. However, he soon notices issues with her memory, an unexpected flaw in neurotech. Enraged, he confronts his top scientists, who inform him that Chris's consciousness has been transferred into a robot. This has caused disruptions in their system. Van, fearing the collapse of his company, orders them to locate the rogue robot. Then contacts Mark, who is inside a neurotech simulation. Then reminds Mark of his past as the feared robot butcher and asks for his help in capturing Michelle and recovering Cosmo. Mark agrees, and then provides him with a new neurocaster suit. Back in D, Michelle and Evans spot an abandoned mall, suspecting Dr. Kian is hiding inside. As they approach, robots living inside the mall attack them by throwing a fridge, injuring Tim. Soon, the robots capture them and drag them inside where various robots designed for different human tasks resided. These robots were quite friendly. Their leader, Dr. Peanut, arrived and greeted everyone. Michelle and Evans were shocked to see him alive. Peanut asked why they had come because the Revengers kept invading their territory. Michelle then said, "I'm looking for Dr. Yan, who resides here in the Edge." Peanut replied, "There's a large safe house far from here. He might be staying there." Just then, a barber robot approached and offered to cut their hair, but Michelle refused. Many robots were observing them. Peanut then said, "I will send you both a little farther away. Until then, you can rest here." Michelle then told Peanut about her brother, who was controlling Cosmo with his consciousness. Peanut couldn't understand why a child like her brother was being held captive. Even Michelle was confused about this. She then asked Peanut for help in finding her brother, but he refused. Feeling dejected, Michelle stepped outside, recalling memories of her brother, Chris. She remembered their Christmas party, where they were upset about their parents' arguments. Chris was exhausted from his college studies. Michelle had once told him, "If you don't go back, I will annoy you until you do. You have the power to change the world one day." Remembering this, Michelle started crying. Cosmo comforted her and, using his projector, played a cartoon for Michelle. The other robots gathered to watch and enjoy the show. This melted Peanut's heart. The next day, Michelle and Evans prepared to head to the safe house. This time, Peanut decided to help them, bringing some battle-ready robots. Meanwhile, inside the Edge, Mark had arrived and saw Michelle and Evans leaving. They traveled a long distance and, by nightfall, reached the safe house. But as they moved forward, the Revengers ambushed them. The team rushed toward a nearby house, but there was no door, just walls. They grew anxious as the Revengers surrounded them from outside. Suddenly, music played from within the house. The ground beneath them gave way, and they fell into a hidden passage. Standing before them was Dr. Kian. Michelle grabbed him and demanded, "Where is my brother?" The team threatened Kian until he revealed, "Your brother is in the center of Seattle." Michelle asked, "Why is he still alive? And how?" Kian explained, "The robots were winning the war against humanity. Amidst this, you and Chris had an accident. When we checked Chris at our center, we found something special in his brain, a divine gift. That discovery led to the creation of neurotech." Michelle yelled, "You lied to me. You told me my brother was dead. Why did you do this?" Kian then showed them a robot built entirely from Chris's memories. It was a robotic version of Kian himself. The robot revealed how Kian had used Chris's consciousness while he was in a coma because Chris's brain contained immense energy. That energy fueled the entire neurotech project. Michelle argued, "You should have let him die. You exploited him." But Kian showed her a memory where, even in his coma, Chris had had grabbed his hand, he was still alive inside. Kian had tried to shut down Neurotech to let Chris rest in peace, but then had refused, leading to their fallout. Before leaving the lab, Kian had secretly connected Chris's mind to a robot, allowing him to transfer his consciousness whenever he wished. Michelle asked, "Why did you do this?" Kian replied, "I wanted Chris to have a family among the robots." Furious, Michelle shouted, "I was his family." Evans had to hold her back as she attacked Kian. Michelle then demanded, "Help us escape and take us to Chris." Outside, Mark arrived with his army, and everyone, including Peanut, panicked. Mark detonated explosives and stormed inside. Taking advantage of the darkness, the team attacked Mark. But Mark's new battle suit was too powerful. He gravely injured Peanut. Meanwhile, Michelle and Cosmo tried to escape, but a robot captured Cosmo. Mark's forces took him away, leaving the team devastated. They returned to the mall, only to find it in ruins. Mark's army had destroyed everything and severely injured the robots. Even the barber robot was badly damaged. Peanut mourned for his fallen comrades alongside Michelle. Elsewhere, Mark brought Cosmo before Van. For the first time, Mark saw Chris, who was in a terrible state, being used by Van. Van smirked and said, "Chris, you almost scared me for a moment." He then began transferring Cosmo's consciousness back into Chris's mind. Mark was furious, then had kept a child alive in such a horrible condition. Then declared, "With this boy's help, I have defeated the robots. Thanks to Chris, humanity still stands." Back in the mall, Michelle noticed Evans had gotten a haircut. He told her, "We have to rescue Chris now." Michelle was heartbroken but determined. Evans added, "There are good people in the world. We need to expose Dan's truth to the world." Michelle was touched and grateful for his support. They turned to Kian's robot for an escape route. More robots joined them. Kian explained, "Neurotech is directly linked to your brother's brain. If he dies, Neurotech will shut down completely." Michelle was confused but determined. "Then we have to shut it down forever." Peanut resisted, saying, "We wanted peace, not war." Michelle insisted, "This is the only way to achieve peace. We have no choice." The other robots sided with Michelle, and Peanut finally agreed. The team embarked on a long journey to Seattle. Upon reaching the enemy base, they used a giant robot to lift cars and attack. Then learned about the attack and ordered Mark and his army to eliminate them. A massive battle erupted. Evans fought fiercely, and Peanut piloted a massive robot. Meanwhile, inside the lab, Michelle sneaked in and frightened the scientists, forcing them to flee. She then put on a neuro helmet. On the battlefield, then arrived in his powerful neurocaster suit, unleashing devastation. Mark asked Peanut, "Why are you still fighting?" Peanut responded, "There's nothing greater than freedom." Mark asked, "Not even death?" Peanut replied, "If my death brings freedom to others, I accept it." Mark nodded, saying, "Today, I met a human with less humanity than a robot. I won't support him anymore." With that, Mark walked away. Inside the Neurotech network, Michelle found Chris inside a simulation of their home. Overjoyed, Chris welcomed her, but Michelle insisted, "We have to leave." Chris refused. "I can't. I've only been watching the world from here. Then has used my consciousness to destroy everything. I'm only alive because my brain powers Neurotech." Michelle asked, "Then what do you want?" Chris replied, "Then wants to use me to destroy the world. The only way to stop him is to kill me. You have to shut me down." Michelle broke down. "I can't lose you like this." Chris reassured her, "You always said I would change the world. Now, help me do it." Michelle embraced her brother one last time. When she woke up, she shut down the machines connected to Chris. Neurotech collapsed, and Chris died forever. On the battlefield, Neurotech has shut down, disabled all enemy robots. Evans saw Team fall, mortally wounded, but then noticed a small version of Team emerging from the wreckage, his backup. Evans was relieved. The world watched in confusion as all robots stopped working. Michelle publicly exposed Dan's crimes, revealing how he had experimented on a child, then was arrested. Later, Michelle gave a speech. "Humanity has become dependent on Neurotech, but real connection comes from humans helping each other. If you feel alone, we will build a new world together, one that's better." As she finished, Team praised her speech. Michelle reunited with Evans. Meanwhile, among the fallen robots, Cosmo stirred. His consciousness was still intact. Chris was still alive inside him. The film ends with this revelation.